Yo, what's up? Your boy Cordux is here. A different kind of video than one I usually make, but yeah, this means a lot to me. If you've never played Red Dead Redemption 2, you don't need to. You just really need to take in this scene, something that I want to talk about. It really does feel like a movie, but this scene really helped me out during COVID because that was when I felt like I really hit my lowest mentally, and I felt like I was going through a lot of stuff, and a lot of things were hitting me at once, like most people. And so during that time, I played Red Dead Redemption 2, and I got to this scene right here. And it's really something that I think about a lot to this day. And lately, I've been going through the kind of same thing where I just feel like very overwhelmed with life, and a lot of things are, hitting me at once, and I just feel like I really needed to see this again. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I remember the first time I watched it, and it really just gave me a better outlook on life, and it's something that I needed to hear. And I feel like if you're going through kind of the same thing, it's something that you might need to hear. So here's the context, right? I'm not going to get too into it because I really don't remember a lot from the story, but basically, spoiler, and you can find this online so you can watch it yourself. But our main character right here, Arthur Morgan, just found out that he has TB. He's dying, and he's back in the 1800s or whatever. So there's no cure. So he spent his whole life as an outlaw, and he's trying to deal with what comes after death, or all these questions that he's asking himself that he never thought he'd have to ask himself. And he's trying to look for a new perspective. And then later on in the scene, a nun appears, a nun that you help out, throughout the game, ever so sparingly, and she kind of gives him an answer. Not really, but it's something that I think about a lot, and I think it's very powerful. This scene affected me so much, by the way, that I actually wrote a paper on it in one of my old writing classes. And at the end of the video, I'm gonna read that paper verbatim. It's like a 5-page paper. So if you don't want to read that, this first part of the video is just gonna be me reacting to the scene and giving my thoughts on it as it goes along. And after that, I'll read my paper, which I'm very proud of. It's one of the best things I've ever written, in my opinion, even though it might not seem like that to you. But yeah, let's just watch this scene real quick.
Meet me at the reservation.
Morgan, are you okay?
Yeah, never been. What are you doing here?
Well, I'm on my way down to Mexico. They're finally sending me on a mission. Brother Dorkins is very jealous.
Oh man, he's going through it. I mean, even hearing their voices for me,
What's wrong?
fuck, even hearing their voices for me is very like the familiarity. It's very soothing to me. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm dying, sister.
Okay?
Yeah, I got TB. I got it. Beating a man to death for a few bucks. I've lived a bad life, sister.
We've all lived bad lives, Mr. Morgan. We all sin. But I know you.
You don't know me.
Forgive me, but that's the problem. You don't know you.
What do you mean?
I don't know, but whenever we happen to meet, you're always helping people and smiling.
Oh my god, he doesn't even want to like think about it. He just wants to be stuck in that like depression mode. But she's trying to like cheer him up, and he's just like, "Oh, you're right, but I don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe
That
it."
son, he passed away. I had a girl who loved me. I threw that away. My mama died when I was a kid. And my daddy, well, I watched him die. That weren't soon enough.
My husband died a long time ago. Life is full of pain. But there is also love and beauty.
What am I gonna do now?
Be grateful that for the first time, you see your life clearly.
Oh my God, that line stuck with me. For the first time, you see your life clearly. I think a lot of us get bogged down with a lot of things that are happening right now, with with right in front of us, especially as it's happening. You got things you're worrying about at work, or how your future is going to be, and how to deal with certain situations. But I think, like, when you really stop to think about what's going on with you, like, damn, it's sad that it had to get to this point, but now it just feels like there's a clearer path. He's almost there.
Sure.
Perhaps you could help somebody. Helping makes you really happy.
But I still don't believe in nothing.
Often, neither do I.
Huh?
But then I meet someone like you, and everything makes sense.
You're too smart for me, sister. I guess I'm afraid.
There, there's not many things that make me tear up in media. This is one of them. There's a few things in One Piece, Naruto. There's a panel in Berserk that makes me tear up. But man, this right here, you can tell. If you've played the game, you've seen like the front that he puts up the whole game. He's trying to work his way through. He's trying to be a good man, even though he's doing bad things. But him right here, he's about to cry. He doesn't cry, but it's like, it really hits you like, damn. Like, people at their lowest, like, sometimes if they're a good person, they really try to like understand what's happening, and it's just hard to deal with. This is amazing. This is amazing.
There is nothing to be afraid of, Mr. Morgan. Take a gamble that love exists.
Look at him processing it.
Love in it.
So yeah, that was just a quick reaction to the scene that I think about a lot. So this part is where I read my essay that I wrote like 5 years ago. A few things about this is that there's like a couple criteria that I had to make. There's things that I had to include, like a monomyth, which I don't even remember what that is anymore. Stuff that I had to include them to make get full marks. So it might sound a little wordy. I also had to make like 5 pages. So there might be an extra word count. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, if you're still here, thanks for watching, listening, like, subscribing, all that stuff. But yeah, this is the paper I wrote that I think about a lot. And I haven't really read it. I went over it a little bit the other day, but I'm going to read it again. I'm going to read it now. The video game that I chose to analyze is Red Dead Redemption 2. The reason why I chose this game, so basically, I should have explained. We had to pick a video game with the narrative and then like write about it. Something like that. I don't remember. The reason why I chose this game is because one of the better narrative-driven releases that have come out in the past few years. In this analysis, I will go over the different types of frameworks that are at play in this title, as well as my critique of how the game mechanics lends itself to the overall story. I don't really know what the fuck I'm talking about. I'll give a brief synopsis of this game, as it is a prequel to Red Dead Redemption 1, despite having 2 in the title. Furthermore, this analysis will also mention the monomyth, this is what I had to include, and how this story compares to that structure. I will also discuss how this is indeed an embedded narrative, with the story that, although has instances in which certain events can be slightly different, but ultimately there are plot points in the story that do not change. Finally, the multiple paths and ways that this game uses to tell the story and flesh out the narrative. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a story that revolves around a group of outlaws. This group is known as the Van der Linde Gang, named after the leader Dutch van der Linde. Among this group of individuals is a man named Arthur Morgan. Hey, he is the main character of the game that you play as, and is somewhat of a right-hand man to Dutch and the gang. Other characters that are of note are Micah Bell and John Marston. Micah isn't considered to be the main villain of the game, but he does eventually turn into an antagonist to Arthur further along in the game. John Marston is a very prominent character as he is the main character in Red Dead Redemption 1. This game takes place before the events of the first game, and after another game called Red Dead Revolver. I never played that game. Despite this being the latest release in the franchise, it is considered a prequel of the events that occurred in between the timeline of the previous two games. I think, as mentioned earlier, you play as Arthur Morgan. He is one of the outlaws of the gang that, despite ultimately being perceived as a criminal by the rest of the world, he is one of the more empathetic people in the group. Arthur is by no means a pushover, however. If we are going by archetypes, he is more the caregiver of the group. I don't remember why I put this. Even though Dutch is the leader of the gang, Arthur is seen more as the uncle or the person who has a lot of the gang's best interest at heart. Dutch is more of the ruler archetype who promotes order and looks at the big picture of the situation. He's always thinking of the next big score, which is where he gets his most notable line, "Arthur, I've got a plan." Micah is more of the rebel archetype as he answers to no one except Dutch, which causes a lot of friction between him and the other members of the gang, including Arthur. John is seen as more of the innocent type as he is very trusting and open-minded. This mostly has to do with the fact that he has a family traveling with the gang. His wife Abigail and their son Jack are always around, which gives John more of a compassionate nature despite being an outlaw. Together, these characters, as well as the others in the gang, set out in the Old West trying to find the next big score until their ultimate demise and disbandment of the gang towards the end of the game. Some of the similarities of the stories that coincide with the monomyth, this is the stuff I had to put, or the hero's journey are a little difficult to pinpoint. In the very early stages of the game, we don't really know what Arthur's true overall motive of the game is. The only thing we do know is that the gang as a whole is looking to strike gold, metaphorically speaking, to find the next big heist. There is really no beginning departure moment as they are constantly on the run. It isn't until they come down from the mountains to the Horseshoe Outlook by Valentine that the game slowly starts to develop. If anything, the call to adventure begins as they set up camp in this new area with Dutch and the other members of the gang asking Arthur for help and sending him on missions as they settle in. It isn't long after the boys plan to blow up a train belonging to one of the wealthiest individuals in the area named Leviticus Cornwall. This, in turn, leads to many conflicts between him and others like the Pinkerton Detective Agency that moves the game forward. I barely remember this. As far as the initiation of the story, I believe it more so falls under the category of atonement with the father. Later on in the game, sometime after Chapter 5, Arthur is stricken with illness and collapses in the street. Spoilers! He is taken to a doctor where he finds out he has tuberculosis. Arthur had contracted TB while collecting money for the gang's loan shark, in which a man coughed blood in his face as Arthur was beating him senseless. Obviously, during this point of time, in the Old West, there is no cure for TB, so Arthur has come face to face with the reality that he will eventually succumb to the disease. Atonement of the Father has been synonymous, I think I'm supposed to put synonymous, with life and death. Therefore, I believe this fits well in the story as Arthur is forced to confront his own mortality. This is also where the theme of redemption comes into play as Arthur starts to question the decisions he's made up until this point. This is where a major shift in character occurs as he tries to atone for his sins and make the most out of the last moments of his life. Fire! Who wrote this? As for the return, I believe the refusal to return is the closest to what is being told in the story at this point. After Arthur gets diagnosed with TB and his perspective on life starts to change, he really starts to question Dutch and the well-being of the rest of the gang. At this point of the game, Dutch has really lost his composure, as they have one loss after the other, either at the hands of Cornwall or the Braithwaite family when they kidnap John's son. It's also at this point of the game that we see a stronger bond between Arthur and John. Arthur knows because of his disease that he is on his way out, but is also very concerned about the future of John and his family. He doesn't want John to end up like him and encourages John to leave the life of an outlaw. This eventually leads to the one last mission with Arthur and John as they try to steal Dutch's stash of money so that John can take his family somewhere else and start a new family. The refusal to return falls more onto John, but it's aided by Arthur's guidance. Okay. I believe the story of Red Dead Redemption 2 is definitely an embedded narrative for the most part, but it also has other ways of telling the narrative as well. I say mostly embedded because even though the ultimate goal for Arthur isn't very clear until he gets sick, there are plot points in the story that happen regardless of what route you take in the story. I say this in reference to the honor system mechanic in the game that slightly affects the scenes depending on how you play the game. I mean, I think so. Uh, there's high honor, or being on your best behavior as a player, and low honor, which is the opposite. Depending on which you choose to play as, these affect certain scenes by either changing Arthur's dialogue or who Arthur interacts with in those particular scenes. However, despite these slight variation, the main plot points stay the same no matter how you play the game. No matter what you do, Arthur gets tuberculosis and ultimately dies towards the end of the game while trying to help John escape the law. Even though having high honor or low honor may change the events leading up to Arthur's death, at the end of the day, Arthur is meant to die at this point in time. I had high honor in this part of the game, and Arthur died in a peaceful death on the top of a mountain, I believe so. However, if you had low honor at this point, then Arthur is shot in the head by Micah. It doesn't matter how it happens because Arthur does not go beyond that point in the game. Okay. This story can also be considered an evoked narrative for a few reasons. One reason is the inclusion of John Marston being the beloved character of the first game that people know very well. Having him and his family around gives the ability to flesh out his character a little more before the events of Red Dead Redemption 1. Not only that, but this story takes place in an expanded world around Blackwater, which is the town John lives in when you play the first game. The first game. The entire town is remade from the ground up with the power of the PlayStation 4. Damn, the PlayStation 4! And gives players who are a fan of the original a feeling of nostalgia. The only downside is that this part of the game is not accessible for most of the main story. It is only after Arthur dies that this part of the map becomes playable in the epilogue. The epilogue is only about 5 to 8 hours, but is a nice nod to the old game. Also, Dutch is a familiar face as we see him in Red Dead Redemption 1, and gets a lot more of him in this installment of the game. This game also shows examples of enacted stories, which is indeed an open world game. Throughout the game, as you travel and have some downtime in between missions, you have multiple opportunities to explore the world and its characters. This in turn shows off a little more about Arthur Morgan and his character depending on how you choose to interact with. I'm not just talking about the side missions, like collecting bounties, but also the random events that seem to happen passively. Examples of this include interfering with bar fights, racing random NPCs that approach your horse and want to challenge you, giving money to wounded soldiers, and so on. As a player, you get a lot of character development for Arthur and other members of the gang if you want to help them on their side missions as well. The more that you do, the more you feel bonded to these other characters that don't seem to get much screen time as some of the main members of the game. This is an interesting way to weave the narrative into the game because it is, in a way, these side missions and small detours feel like they are integral parts of the story because of what we get out of the characters. There are many times where you wonder how Arthur will react to certain situations in the end and how the other gang members will interact with him on a daily basis. This is a way for the game to explore without straying too far away from the main story. So like when you go back to the hideout, the base or whatever. Anyway, another way the game makes this feel more impactful is the fact that if you miss or decide to not do certain missions entirely, then they disappear from the game and are not playable as you progress further in the game. Typical stuff. My critique of the narrative and how it meshes with the gameplay as a whole ties into how the game displays ludo-narrative harmony. Jesus Christ, what is that? In the beginning of the game, you know without question that this group of outlaws are not the most upstanding citizens. They are criminals on the run constantly, so you should expect them to do so very unscrupulous acts. It is only until we learn more about Arthur's personality that we see that he does not have some redeeming qualities in him that does not make him entirely evil, all that he does. Make him entirely evil as compared to someone like Micah. This is reflected in the gameplay, which ties into the honor system that I mentioned before. Depending on how you play the game, your actions affect your honor, whether or not you choose to be good or bad. The idea I'm trying to get across is that you are capable of both. The game gives you that option because of what we know about Arthur. For example, when a random NPC rides by on a horse, you have the option of whether or not you want to greet him, insult him, or just straight up murder him. The game gives you these options because Arthur is capable of either one, and whatever you choose to do does not go against his character. There's another example of what I want to point out had a significant impact on how I played the game. After completing certain, I think this is where I'm getting to the scene. After completing certain side missions and having had high honor, you come across a character named Sister Calderon at the train station. Sister Calderon is a side character who is a nun, and is a character that Arthur can help in the past if you choose to. At this point in the game, Arthur is well into his illness, and he has lost his way as a result. Up until this point of the game, I didn't really care if I had high honor or not, but it wasn't until this conversation happened that changed the way I played entirely. In this scene, Arthur is in a bad shape and tells her that he is dying of TB. Arthur pours his heart out to Sister and says that he really doesn't know what to do next. He's having a hard time dealing with the eventual death, where he tells her, "I'm afraid." That moment. It's at this point where Arthur looks the most vulnerable, where he has ever looked in the entire game, to the point where it seems like he might cry. That scene had such a big impact on me as a player, because I wanted the best possible ending that I could get. I stopped messing around too much and played the game straight so as to not lower my honor. Nerd! I think when a game is able to pull that off and make you play by the rules, then I believe that is a great achievement. Yes, it is. My final thoughts on the analysis is that Red Dead Redemption 2 does a great job of telling a narrative in multiple ways. So this is me summarizing it. Monolith became planet. Okay, it's basically a summary. But yeah, that last paragraph is what I wanted to get to. But yeah, this is one of the best. I'll leave this here if you want to read it. But yeah, this is one of the best papers I've ever written. Red Dead Redemption 2. This scene has really meant a lot to me. I think about it daily. When I was going through stuff this week, I wanted to watch this scene, but I waited until now so that you can enjoy it too if you haven't seen it. Even if you never played the game, or if you don't plan on playing the game. I think it's a good message to put out there. So thank you for liking, subscribing, and watching up until this point. If you're going through stuff, I'm sorry, but hopefully you can get through it. It's hard, I get it, but I wanted to help. I thought this would help. So thank you, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and I'll see you next time. Peace.